Alright, good morning YouTube. It is ScottOffRoad. Thank you for coming along. Got another project in the garage. This one's been a thorn in my side for a long time. Getting ready to rip out the transmission and do the clutch. So follow along. It's not going to be a how-to, what to do. It's going to be why I'm doing it, while I'm doing it. See you in a few. Alright, this transmission and clutch has been giving me grief since since as long as I've owned the Jeep. When I bought the Jeep at 50,000 miles, or just shy of, it would kick out of first gear, and it continued to do that up until the 200,000 mile mark. Now, I talked to transmission shops about getting this fixed, and they said it was an inherent problem with the transmission and they could fix it or replace the transmission, but there was no guarantee that it would last. So I just kept putting it off. Well, at 200,000 miles, I decided it was time to replace the original clutch. It was still going, had not left me stranded, so I figured it was a good time to do it. So I pulled it in the garage, ordered a clutch, pressure plate, throwout bearing, pilot bearing, and a new flywheel. But when I did this, I could not find a flywheel for an 05 Wrangler. I could find one for an 04, unless I went to the dealer. The dealer had the 05, but it was $800 for a flywheel, and I wasn't about to do that. So in my mind, an 04 6-cylinder, 6-speed would be the same flywheel as a 05's with a 6-speed, 6-cylinder. So I put it all together, put everything back in the Jeep, and lo and behold, the Jeep wouldn't start. Troubleshoot. Happened to glance at the old flywheel sitting on the workbench, and the outer ring on the flywheel was different. It had notches in it, whereas the 04 had pins on it. And apparently those are the pins or notches that the crankcase positioner sensor reads. So here we go. Had to drop the transmission, clutch, everything to go back to the original flywheel. That sucked. Got everything in, put it all back together, worked fine, but I started having a throwout bearing squeal. A new throwout bearing, but I couldn't figure that out. Did a little research, kept researching. Local four-wheel drive shop convinced me that they could rebuild the transmission, and it would not kick out of first gear, and it would last. So I took it in, had them take care of it. Told them, while you have it, it's squealing like a throwout bearing. Take a look at it, figure out what's wrong, fix it. So, for the third time in less than 6 months, they've dropped the transmission, rebuilt it, replaced the throwout bearing and the pilot bearing, put it all back together, and then called me and said they were having some issues with the shifting and for me to come drive the Jeep. So I went and picked it up, drove it. Sure enough, shifting from first to second, it took 2 hands and a whole lot of strength. And the throwout bearing was still squealing. So took it back to them. They dropped the transmission for the 4th time. Rebuilt the clutch again. Fixed the shift problem. Apparently there was a bearing that was a different size, so they fixed that. And this time they replaced the pressure plate and clutch assembly. Put it all back together, gave it back to me. They said they drove it for a day without having it squeal. It didn't make it 2 blocks, and the throwout bearing was squealing. So I took it back. We're now up to the 5th time. This time they dropped the clutch assembly and replaced everything, and then also checked the input shaft sleeve. And they said everything was fine. So put it all back in, Drove it home, started squealing again, took it back. I think I had him drop it one more time and try replacing everything again. And each time they added a piece to it, and so I had to pay a couple $100 here, $100 there. They were out the labor. So this is now the 7th time I've had it. I'm done. I'm fixing this, or I'm ripping the transmission out and I am putting an automatic in. So here we are. Drove it to Missouri. Got tired of listening to it squeal all the way down there, all the way back. Dropping the transmission, fixing this. But from the 7th time to this time, I have found a flywheel for the 05. And I also found a video from center force clutch, and it pointed out that on the JKs, the shift or the fork for the throwout bearing wears out, and it's a common problem causing a rattle. Well, I've never had that looked at. All right. Get it. There, I got it. So after cleaning it up, you can see how scored up and scratched up that shaft is. And then right there, there's a dip in that shaft, which is causing the rattle. So how that got missed is beyond me. But I think that's the cause for our rattle. Now to decide what the next steps are. All right, the old part, a little bit of scoring on it. The new part, Mopar, nice and clean. I haven't done this yet. This is the old bearing. This is the new bearing. Still has a little bit of movement to it. Little bit. A lot better. Now I'm going to pause. Alright, here are the two bearings on the forks. Not good. The new one on the new fork. No movement. So, I'm going to hypothesize that the fork was bad, the spring got bent, those wobbled around, scored out the input shaft sleeve. With all of that replaced with new parts, my rattle should go away, and I'm hoping yours will too. Ah, success. We figured it out. This is what the problem was. Why the shop didn't notice it before, beyond me. But by gosh, we figured it out. It's time to put it all back together. But yeah, let's talk about the rest of that story. So when I was putting it back together, and this is before Matt got here, I had everything installed, hooked up, and I started the Jeep, started right up, no squeal, amazing, happy. Went to press the clutch, and there was no clutch. Well, on a hydraulic clutch, when you replace it, you have to pump it once or twice to let it build pressure and bleed itself out. Pump and pump and pump and pump and pump. Still no pedal. Uh-oh. Yep, crawl underneath it, and I am dripping brake fluid from between the transmission and the engine. And hydraulic clutch fluid in a Jeep Wrangler is DOT brake fluid. Got to looking at it. The only thing that it could be would be the hydraulic clutch cylinder. Unbolted that. Well, apparently when we installed this, or let me rephrase that. When I installed this, I must have had that push rod on the edge of the shift fork or the clutch fork, and when I pumped it, it slipped off it, shot past it, shot into the bell housing. So, 8th time is a charm. We had to drop the transmission for the 8th time, pull out the fork, clean everything up, put the hydraulic cylinder back together, everything put back in the Jeep, reinstall everything, and put it all in. Fortunately, I'm done. It's all put together. It runs. There's no squeal. It shifts fine. It's the way it should have been 7 tries ago. Oh well. Remember, you fix the Jeep fixes you. Thanks for coming along. I hope you liked it. As always, like, subscribe, and follow. And have a blessed day. Got a couple videos coming up, which would be a belly up skid plate, a shift conversion, and an engine lift. So check those out.